Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to family and friends, and Sangha, and dear friends of Lady Diana Judith Mukpo, who we are remembering today in a celebration of life. We're going to hear tributes and recollections and potentially stories and scandals. And grandchildren. Of a life well lived and well loved, of our dear friend and example and shining light and mentor. I'd like to begin this afternoon by inviting Diana's spouse and love and husband, Dr. Mitchell Levy.
My wife was a remarkable person. One of my favorite stories from when the Vijayadhara and Diana first came to Canada was when they were in Montreal. They had very little money at that time, and they always had a rice book pot cooking on the stove. Vijayadhara sent Diana out to buy a duck to put in the rice pot, and she, in fact, did buy a live duck. And then, of course, knowing Diana, proceeded to set it free. The Vijayadhara was upset at first and then smiled. And then she revealed that she did buy a live duck and then set it free after buying it. He could only smile and laugh about it. Of course, that would not be the first time that the Vijayadhara would be surprised or smile at something that Diana did. I also received permission from Diana to tell one more story. And she had me rehearse this multiple times. I had to keep retelling it to her. In her last life, Diana remembered her last life being a nun. She described her yidam to him and Chögyam Rinpoche, who both decided that it would not be good for her to know who she was during that time, which is why she had a special room at the nunnery. She also remembered eating a pomegranate when she died, which was obtained by a trader when they came through Tibet. As I said, Diana made me rehearse this in front of her many times. She spent most of her life in a cave rather than a nunnery. As I said, Diana was a remarkably brave woman. There are so many other stories of her bravery that there are simply too numerous to mention. What I would say is that her bravery was uppermost for all of us during the dying process. I would like to also give special mention to Lisa Fiore and Jane Carpenter-Cohn, who were both with her during the dying process. I can only hope that I am fortunate enough to be surrounded by the love and devotion from Lisa and Jane while she was in the dying process. We all worked together as a team during her death, and for that I will always remain appreciative and grateful. As I've said many times during our lifetime together of almost 48 years, that my wife was a remarkably brave woman.
Mitchell. Next, I'd like to invite Diana's daughter, Chögyam. Today, I stand here with a heavy heart and a heart full of gratitude. Since my mother's passed, I have found myself in disbelief, asking why? Why couldn't I have had more time with her? How will I be okay? What will I do without her? Who will I turn to when I need advice? When I'm crying hysterically because I don't know what to do? Or how will I go on without her laughter and her constant reminder of how proud she is of me? To many, my mother was the drip Chögyam Mukpo, a strong individual who could command a room with just her presence. She was fierce in every way, her tongue sharp when needed, yet her words carried a softness. She moved through life with unwavering grace and with dignity. What always struck me most about her was her strength. She endured 20 plus years of cancer, but she still found the time to tend to her garden, her family, and to teach me how to move through the world. With her, I learned that family is not defined by blood, but by love and the act of choosing. And the greatest gift she ever gave me was that she chose me. To my mom, I want to say thank you for the laughter you gave me in difficult times, for the discipline when I needed guidance, and for the shelter of your love when the world felt unkind. You live with grace and you left with courage. I will carry your strength within me when I speak and how I love and how I face my own storms. May you be free of pain and suffering in your next life, and may karma bring us back together again. And in your word, I love you to the moon and back. Shambhala. Now I'd like to invite Chögyam Mukpo to share some words with us.
The art critic and philosopher John Berger once wrote that the dead inhabit a timeless moment of construction continually rebegun. That construction is the state of the universe at any given moment. In the months leading to my mother's passing, I contemplated the space that the dead occupy in our lives. While they're here, the seeming abundance of a loved one's presence allows the mundane to cloud our view. This is a luxury. We know that we are balanced precariously on the needle tip of impermanence, yet we allow ourselves to indulge in the fantasy of forever. By giving ourselves this daily gift of blindness, we are permitted to bathe in the small details of each other's presence, using them for reassurance or rejection, strength or shame, annoyance or adoration, and the many other materials of human life. To some extent, this cloud of partial seeing is a necessity. Or if we were to look directly at the sun behind it and see our loved ones for who and what they really are every day without any filter, we might lose our capacity to do anything but sit at their feet and bask in its rays. This is doubly true for the crippling broken hearts we would have if we allowed ourselves to truly admit they can't stay in the sky forever. To dance in our own lives, we veil the people we love in a fiction of permanence. And nowhere is this veil draped more care and necessity than over our parents. When it slips, which it always must, from the raw ache of its loss bloom the familiar griefs that accompany death, known to humans across time. Did I spend enough time with them? Did they know how much I loved them? Did I know? But along with these sorrows, there's a kind of magical alchemy that takes place in death. As the veil of permanence falls, so too do its obscurations. Suddenly, the light of that sun, too bright for us to look at every day, is utterly revealed. On the precipice of loss, the clouds dissolve and our anesthesia is lifted. Through our splintering hearts, we are confronted with the dazzling and painfully fragile splendor of our loved ones. The light that they radiate during these moments does not dissipate after they are gone. If anything, my experience is it becomes brighter. Wherever it is that we go after we leave our body, in a sense, we are rendered naked and true by death, as we take our silent throne in the lives of those we leave behind. This is what Berger described as the timeless moment of construction the dead inhabit. Both desolate and full, from within it they look at us without pause, and we look back at them. And what will that moment look like for Diana Judith Mukpo? When I think of her, the image that comes into my mind most clearly is her with her head thrown back, teeth bared, howling with unself-conscious laughter. There were so many facets to my mother that it's hard to pick the right superlatives to describe her. She was fierce, gentle, caring, stone stubborn, honest to a fault, discerning, full of mirth, riotously funny, and lived entirely without fear of what others thought about her. She brought me to the cliff's edge of the universe and pointed out magic to me, true magic, along with the solid earth integrity you have to stand on to see it properly. She was a matriarch and a world builder from which grew roots that nourish a powerful family that will, somehow, continue without her long into the future. She leaves behind grandchildren, the devotion of friends across the world, the respect of her peers, and the gratitude of so many. In a very real sense, her life is peerless. I'm not sure I would believe it wasn't a fantasy if I hadn't been there to see it. Her time on this earth was adorned with brilliance and wonder, courage, and the sacred. At a young age, she looked around at the confines of the world that she'd been born into, decided that there were chains that had to be broken, and never looked back. That was not an easy thing to do in the time and space she came from, but that's who she was. And it brought her directly into the eye of the cosmos, and a fleeting and possibly radiant meeting between ancient and new worlds that still echoes today. She loved her first husband, Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche, with undying loyalty until the very end, along with the family she's now left behind. If it wasn't for her, he would have been adrift in a strange world without a map. She was in many ways his equal, every bit as powerful, steady, and kind. The Buddha Dharma was at the very core of her being. She was not the most religious person you'd meet, but she didn't have to. Her devotion was impeccable and almost entirely untainted by personal ambition. I do not believe that she met Trungpa Rinpoche by chance. I believe that they were pulled towards one another by the karmic magnetism of shared bodhisattva. Her commitment to his work and certainty in its essential sanity was unwavering right to her final breath. As she laid in her deathbed, teachers from across the world were continuously in contact with her, sharing instructions on how to die at the same time as they expressed their appreciation for how she lived. And it wasn't just talk. My mother was a powerful person, often more than she even knew. Once I admitted her that occasionally I found her a bit intimidated. She looked at me, puzzled, and said, "How could you be scared of me? I'm so sweet." And yes, true, she was. But she could also effortlessly tower over everyone in the room, so naturally that I'm not even sure she even noticed it. But still, of all the gifts that my mother gave me, the one that I found myself appreciating the most these past months is that she imprinted on me the importance of kindness. She wasn't perfect, nobody is, but she taught me that there is value to being a decent person, along with having good table manners, which she would helpfully whack me with a butter knife when I forgot. For nearly 2 decades, every time I saw her, she'd supplicate me to provide her with a grandchild, and I'd studiously pretend that I didn't hear the question. It's a sorrowful, yet somehow entirely perfect irony that I finally acquiesced just 4 days before her death, when my daughter Athena was born. The last conscious act that I believe she performed was to see her in pictures and videos that I sent, a parting gift that I hope in some slight way helped to repay her for all that she gave me. My certainty in knowing that I will be able to nurture my own child comes from the training I received through how she raised me. For that, and so much else, I will be eternally grateful. There's so much more to say, but I'll leave it there. She was clear and crisp right till the end, and her mind barely wavered. There was nearly no fear of death, and mostly she spent her time reassuring her loved ones that they would be okay without her. I read Dharma and poetry to her at her bedside, where we looked at old photos together and told stories. There was an intimacy and sacredness in that space that I won't ever forget. It was at times a painful gift, but a clarifying and precious one. In it, I came to understand myself better, where we come from, what soil my life sprouted from, how impossibly bright the world she carried herself into were, and how they shaped me along with so many others. At one point, I was at her bedside playing talk through my phone that Trungpa Rinpoche gave here at Karme Chöling in 1971. The talk was about dying, and he opened by commenting that it was a special day, his wife's birthday. She said, "I must have been 19 or 20 then." On the wall, there was a photo of her as a baby, just a snapshot of the moment. And when I looked at it, I could just about feel her tiny body moving on the other side of it. Out of the speaker, the sounds of crickets and a crowd shuffling on their cushions lay behind a thin veil of time, so close I could almost poke them with my finger. Next to me, she lay in bed, an old woman in an old body, her life ebbing, but her eyes still piercing and soft. The boundaries of time and space felt light for a moment, and I could see her entire life cycle arranged before me. What a fragile bit of exquisite magic life is. How much force and creation are born from these little forms we inhabit, just for a moment before we dissolve into timelessness. Trungpa Rinpoche once said that dying is romantic. This may be true, but I don't think there's ultimately any right or joyful way to do it. But surrounded by people she loved, in the afterglow of a life utterly well lived, with a legacy that will roll like thunder into the generations that follow, I believe she came as close as one can. She won't ever be able to hold Athena or kiss her forehead the way she did mine as a baby. But one thing I can say I learned from her is how to love. Now, it's my turn to give that onwards to my daughter, along with the many, many other lessons I learned from Diana Mukpo. Safe travels, Mom. I'll miss you. Thank you for everything. I'll pay it forward. Keep you so.
Would you share your thoughts with us, David Mukpo? I love Mama, and I mean,
He's not shy about saying something unprompted. True fortune and privilege is often quite complex. So ingrained in your being that you see right through it. So much a part of you that feeling constant appreciation would be thanking every breath you take in. In a life full of fortune, there is nothing I have been given the gift of that can touch what it has been like to have you as my mother. A love so constant, it's impossible to see it in all its power until that breath can't be taken anymore. Mama, Granny, Sakyang Wangmo, Tunsa Wangmo, Lady Diana Mukpo. It's somewhat interesting for a woman to have so many names who changed for nobody. A beacon of the most simple quality that seems so often untouchable. Genuine authenticity. Not born from arrogance or effort, but from an unshakable confidence in her vision in this world. The loss of my mother leaves a hole that is deeply unfillable. And I know I'm not alone in that. She was so much to so many of us in so many different ways. My family's already talked about many of them. The lesson she taught me most thoroughly is how to care for people, how to show up, and not just for us. And so let her have the friendships she did, which my brother touched on, my father touched on. Unbreakable bonds with people that you need to see up close to understand the magic and power behind. Love and care that went so deep in both directions with the people around her that it left me speechless watching in the last months of her life. Person after person showing up to give her everything they had. And I saw it, I had no choice but to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for giving my mother everything you had. Response, and I probably should have seen this come, was annoyance.
It's her who is caring for me. It doesn't touch what she's provided me through my life. Things that can feel ordinary does not make them common. While this interchange between my mother and the people around her was ordinary, and born from decades of work she put into those she loved, the depths of the relationship she had with so many of you is one of the most magical things I will ever touch in my life. Over the last 4 months, when I would go back to see her, the first thing she would say to me when she could get me off the phone was, "Sweetie, can we talk for a few minutes?" By the end, I knew what she meant when she said it. It was a list. A list of things she wanted me to help her with to ensure that the people in her life were taken care of. Even if it was as simple as to just make sure that they felt appreciated. It wasn't about making her feel more comfortable. It wasn't about how badly she felt, even as her body fell apart. So the last words that could come out of her mouth was some small detail she wanted me to help her with in taking care of the people she loved. Only after we could get through that, she would say as I walked by, again, probably on the phone, "Can we just be together for a bit?" It was my favorite thing to hear because it meant she could be content for now, until the next visit, that she had thought through everyone else that needed care. Never mind that it was her deathbed she was lying on, it was all of us that she was worried about caring for. The most fearless warrior I've ever met, kind, gracious, an unbelievable cook, one of the worst haircutters on the planet, particularly when cutting her own, dignified, proud, curious to the end, gentle and tough. She was a mother that inspires me still to be the parent she was to me through every phase of my life. I will miss her more than any words can describe. But know that who she was will live through all of us. The hole that she leaves is unfillable. But I know she trusted all of us completely to show up in this world for the people around us, like she did every day. I love you, Mom. May you be connected back into the mind that continued to inspire, and you remain steadfast in loyalty to until your last breath. And as you said to me in the last week, we found each other at least once. I will find you again. I love you.
This time we're going to begin inviting some of Lady Diana's longtime friends and cohorts to share some recollections and memories and stories of her. First, I'd like to invite Paula Bickford to come forward.
I've been so blessed to have the honor to be part of Diana's life and part of the family's life. She had this way of waking you up. I remember there was a time I was working in the household. It was one of the warrior assemblies that Lady Diana and Mitchell were doing together. They were so glorious. And I was in the household, and Deirdre was always the one to pack the bags. Because Deirdre knew how to pack the bags. And Deirdre had started packing the bags, but then she had to go. And then Lady Diana came back and she saw the bag half packed. And she kind of like, this is no good. And it's like, I realized, oh, I have to do it. And then packing, and a little while later, there was something else that needed to get sort of put into the bag. And I went into the bedroom and she was lying there and I'm struggling getting this wonderful thing in there. And you just hear this laugh. And I said, "Are you laughing at me?" And of course she said, "Yeah." But it was done such a joyful and uplifted, and that was the cut. That was just, just to it. It was a gift. It was a true gift. And there's other stories and other playful times. There was, I think it was when the Karmapa was visiting Boulder, and my husband and I there was some playful things happening, and there was this joke about, more money will, do service. And so we were greeting them at the airport, and we were playing out this joke, and we put up these signs, or a quarter will carry bags. And so we opened the door, and she had the quarter. And just these little playful things, that this was how she was. And it just touched our hearts. It was just such joy. And then the other thing she shared, of course, was her passion for workouts. And at one point a few years ago, she had joined this Facebook group called Fandom Maniacs. Which of course she shared with me. And at one point, after many weeks of all these boxes of orchids arriving in my I was texting her, I said, "I think my husband thinks I'm crazy." And it was just such a fun thing to share. And I miss her. I love her. And always be there in my heart.
Thank you, Paula. I'd like to invite Marty Chavez.
Good afternoon, all. I think I got the wrong invitation. At lunch, Wendy talked to me. Could you share a couple of little stories about times when Diana was not the Diana that people would think she is? Little odd things. So I thought that I'll come up with a thing or two. Now I'm editing in my head. But, I thought to share just a few little glimpses. The first one, the thing is appropriate is here. The first time I encountered Diana, I won't say met, but we didn't actually meet, but we encountered each other, was here in summer of 1970. And I know Chuck and I were here at the same time. I don't think is anybody else in the room who was here during the summer of 1970? So I'm clear. All right, I can make that shit up. Oh my dear. You interestingly haven't changed. In any case, the first time I encountered Diana was in what used to be the little living room when you first came in over there. And Rinpoche had not even done his first seminar yet, that he did a little later on, the seminars of Milarepa and Gamboba. So it was just like a little talk to so-called community, but we didn't think of ourselves as a community, just a group of people who were here. And he's giving a little, very lovely talk. I haven't got a clue of memory about what the theme was. But well into the talk, all of a sudden, a yellow head appeared in the doorway. There was a stairway coming down from the rooms they were in. And there in the doorway, the little head stuck out and went, psst, psst, Chuggy, Chuggy. And Rinpoche looked up. Yes, sweetie. And she said, time for dinner is now. Just a minute, dear. And she disappeared. So that's how I met her. We said, first glimpse. I'm thinking she was probably about 18, maybe. 16. She was still 16? Yeah. I was always 20. In any case, so that's when I first met her. And I don't mean to contradict anybody. She was exactly the way it's described, all of those incredible attributes. And she could be tough, she could be incurious, she could be annoying, she could be bullheaded, demanding, all of these things. But as was said by the boys, she wasn't trying to not be. She was who she was. And while she always succeeded to do the big things, you saw the beautiful images of her in robes and colored assemblies and gowns, and she did all of that, whether or not she wanted to, and she might even have tried not to, but she did all of that. But there were some things she just did not do. And as years went on, one of the things that became you'd either call it a feature, some would call it a bug, of life at the Kalapa court, that the evenings got later and the rituals of dinner got longer. And at some point, for long periods of time, there was no such thing as a dinner without extended time before the dinner, and then extended elocution exercises at dinner, and poetry, and then the true qualities game. I won't bore you with the rules of the qualities game, but it could go on for a long period of time as people got more and more tired and more hungry. And for most of the folks who came as invited, yes, I was a servant, I was a house servant, but I had a couple of feathers in my hat as kusumdapa. And for them, it was like an incredible experience of a lifetime very often. Maybe even the only time they got to have an evening with him. But you dare not invite or even suggest to Lady Diana that she go to dinner with him. If anybody can contradict me, jump up and protest. But she would not do that. And even if he said, please, no, she never went through that I experienced the ritual or the feature or whatever the hell it was of an evening with her husband at the Kalapa court of that sort. I see Ahsoka nodding in some version of that. Okay. Yes. Well, But then I almost want to go to one last thing, which is at the other end of the spectrum. Which may have been the last time I had a real substantive conversation with Lady Diana. And it was a meaningful conversation. For me, it was a tough conversation. And I don't even know whether I would describe my relationship with her as a friend. I mean, I was close, served in all the different ways I did and wanted to, but I don't know whether I ever was really a friend, the way some of you folks were so fortunate. But whatever it was, I had been asked, not that many, 2.5 years ago, when she had come to whatever we call it now, Drawing Mountain Center, and had done a program at Lodro, and it was kind of a warrior thing, and they brought some folks up through going through the levels and this and that. But there was one thing they didn't do, which was to offer the final transmission, which we knew under various names. It's called the Shambhala transmission. And that was required for what we were going to do next. It was a program, first time I believe. We had a many months program. I think Agnes, you were involved in the faculty on that. We dove into the transcripts of the Kalapa assemblies. We went through it for about 6, 8 months of classes online. But in order to participate, you had to have that transmission. And for various uninteresting reasons, over the years, there were a few people who were trying to do it, but for one reason or another, they all fell away. And I more or less, because I became this other little thingy feather thing called it, the Warrior General. I was the person who basically did it before Kalapa, before Abhishekas and Shambhala, whatever, before the Scorpion seals, that kind of thing. I've done it many times. I was not concerned about doing it, but I was very concerned about doing it then. Because this is after what I sometimes refer to as the Shambhala, and things sort of falling apart in various ways, and you have to identify in which corral you were coming from. And I felt that I could not offer this transmission unless I had the simultaneous approval of Lady Diana on the one hand, and Mipam Rinpoche on the other. Because I just didn't feel I wanted to be somebody who, from either perspective, would feel I'd done something that they hadn't wanted me to do. I wrote to the Sankyong about that, and he was wherever he was, and I never heard back. So I took that as a yes. But I figured if he wanted to say no, he might have communicated. I took that as okay. And then I heard from Lodro Lopan that I had requested from her that she wanted to talk to me about it and understand how I was going to do it, if I would any nuance, this and that. And so we had I felt a deep and honest conversation about the transmission, about the way I had been trained to do it, how I felt it still should and could be done. She didn't dispute any of that. I had a bizarre habit of leaning maybe a little too much into the Nova Scotia of it. And anyway, we went through it, and she offered some very thoughtful, subtle, nuanced, and clearly well-reflected thoughts about it. And when I came away from that conversation, I really felt held. I felt okay. I will do what feels right, and I did. And the program went on. But that left me with the sense that it wasn't just a matter that she had the authority over it, but that she viewed it as something that needed to be held the way you would hold Dharma, you would hold something precious, and you would respect it enough to not be blind about the response. And that was what I carried about Lady Diana. I think of her as Her Majesty, to dismiss it without alterability. Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to buy Will Riken.
Thank you all for having Paul and myself as being part of. Thank you, Lady Diana. But I wanted to interject just a little bit on the end of Paul's story. Getting the coins, they all got coins for opening the cardboards, and then when we went in, them getting up, checked me in luggage and stuff, and I went to Lady Diana, standing to the side, and I said, Lady Diana, can I ask you a question? And she said, well, we didn't give you enough money. And I said, no, I wanted to know if you would please preside over Paul at my wedding. She said, be delighted to. So what I wanted to talk about here for now is something that the family all knows the story, but I wanted to share with everybody else that the last thing that we were given by Lady Diana, we were invited down a few months ago, and Lady Diana was quite surprised. She was up cooking dinner, hosting us, taking care. We had no idea what to expect when we got there. But before we went down there, she had heard that we had lost one of our dogs, got hit by a car. And so she knew that we were heartbroken and then we were without this dog. So we were sitting there and having dinner, and then Lady Diana said, I want you two to go to the big dog rescue ranch and go look at the animals. She was big on the rescue of animals. And so we said, yes, we'll go. So we were driving up there and we got there, and it's this huge, beautiful place. And I looked at Paula and I said, we are not going to get anything here. We can't do that. We're going to be traveling, all these things. It's not going to happen. We went in and wandered around. They took us to all these different areas. And then Paula looked through a window and there was this thing in there looking at her. And she got tears in her eyes. She said, oh, look at that. So I can't say no to my sweetie. So we went through the process of starting to adopt this animal. They found out there that we had another dog already. They said, well, we're going to have a meet and greet in order for this to happen. So Paula, in her mind, was going to drive 3.5 hours back up to where we live, get our puppy, drive 3.5 hours back, have the meet and greet, and pick up this little sweetheart to take home with us. So we back over, had dinner with family again, and Lady Diana said, well, take my dog. Just take Luna. Mitchell can drive Luna, and then you can do the meet and greet with Luna. And I think there was some concern that Luna might have come from that place. She met some people there might recognize her, not me. So we did that. We went over and the meet and greet took place, and then they said it would be good if the two dogs didn't ride out of here in the same car. And Mitchell said, well, I'll take their other dog. So we ended up with this little dog. And I want to tell you that I'm too old to have a 6-month-old puppy. But we got in the car and drove the 4 hours back up to my house. Paula drove and I was in the back seat. And that dog melted my heart. It was instant bodhicitta. And the dog still now, if I go in the bathroom and I open the door to come out, she's laying in front of the door when I come out because she's totally protective of this old man here. So that was the last gift. Lady Diana, for once again breaking my heart.
Mr. Normal Steam returns. The return of the normal steam.
I hope all of you, maybe me, who have stories that are memorable, as many have been today, will please record them, write them down, do something to share them with people who you will never know. Because it's important that we somehow preserve what we can that is really inspired for future generations. I didn't come up to say this, but having listened to all this, I don't want to lose this. This is really precious. Lady Diana was a very dear friend. I don't have any doubt we were good friends, but we weren't friends in the way I'm good friends with many of my good friends. But it was a special, very kind, heartfelt friendship. People have already spoken about how important she was in protecting, propagating, encouraging the propagation of Trungpa Rinpoche's teachings. Incredibly important. And as one of the people that is also responsible in that way, we shared this responsibility. We discussed it many, many times. And whenever I needed her to sign off on something or advice about how to do something, she was instantly available, usually by text, if it was more complicated, by email. And she responded usually within minutes, maybe an hour. Someone wanted a transmission that the Lopan and I felt she should be the one to approve, in particular the Kalpa Assembly transmission, whatever it's called, lodge transmission. And she was right there. So this is incredibly important that I feel you should know. She was on the spot, available, and we knew that. Lopan, I'm sure, would completely agree. I was very grateful that I could visit with her just a few months ago, early April, just after the Parinivan commemoration. When I arrived, she had just a couple hours earlier gotten the news from her doctors that her cancer was back in a big way. And she told me about it. She said that she had said to her doctor, "So, is this it?" And apparently the doctor said to her, "Well, not necessarily. There's some other things we could do and whatever." But she kind of gave me a look like, "I don't know. I think this is it." And it was very matter of fact. Of course, I was sad to hear this, even though this has been an expectation for years. But her acceptance of this was remarkable. We had a wonderful visit, telling all sorts of stories. She had a few agenda items, wanted to make sure that I knew about, and wanted a little discussion about this and that. It wasn't a lot of business, just a little bit. She cooked a delicious dinner. Not only did she send me home with a recipe, but she gave me a new jar of the spice that was involved in whatever this was, some Vietnamese.
What about the Cheryl?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, my wife has almost used it up now. We made this dish several times. Diana was a remarkable, wonderful person. She leaves us with all these stories and memories, but there is something else that she leaves us with. Her autobiography. And I'm just rereading it. I have not read this since before it was published in manuscript edition, and it's fun, and I don't remember most of it. I really encourage you to read this, and I wanted to share one little vignette. I took a group of pilgrims to eastern Tibet in 2007. And one of the people, an older woman, retired anthropologist who had lived in India for 20 years, but did not encounter Tibetans or anything to do with the Buddhist tradition. She looked me up as the tour leader, to figure out who is this guy, and saw that I was a student of Chögyam Trungpa, never heard of him. Somehow, she adopted Lady Diana's book. I'm not quite sure how that connection happened, but it had come out not that long before. She bought the book, she read it cover to cover at least twice. And during our 3 weeks together in Tibet, it became obvious that this woman had learned an immense amount about not just the Buddhist teachings. There's not a lot of doctrine in there, but she learned how Trungpa Rinpoche taught us. And it was amazing how much this woman learned from her book, having known nothing whatsoever. She could give a 2-hour lecture on the Big No. So Lady Diana leaves us with this, that everybody can have, and you might be interested to know, the Lhotse Library in New York is a Tibetan organization that is not involved with Tibetan religion, but more Tibetan culture. And one of their stated missions is to translate important books of Western literature into Tibetan, so that they can also appreciate some of the great things about the world literarily. They chose Lady Diana's book to be the first book they wanted to translate into Tibetan. And it is translated, it is available for free somewhere on the web. One of my Tibetan friends who knows English well says it's quite good. And he actually corrected a couple little things. Whoever did the translation did not get Great Eastern Sun quite right. And he knew that. But he said it's good. And I've heard it's hot. They're really enjoying it. So record your stories, please.
So to remind people that one place you can share remembrances and stories and tributes is on the Chronicles Ocean site if you would like to visit them. I'd like to invite Lady Diana's dear friend Gail Flynn. Lady Diana was my girlfriend. We fell in love in the late 90s. Before that, I didn't, of course I knew her and was very involved in our role together, but I actually think the first time we connected was at Mitchell and Diana's for Thanksgiving with a couple other friends at the table. And also a dear friend of mine, Susanna, said to me at some point before that evening, she said, "You should know Diana. You guys would be so good to get, close together. We, very connected in a very personal way, So actually she was right. Ever since that evening, things really snowballed. And I spent a lot of time with her. Mitchell and Diana came up to Vermont. We have a home here. And we just spent a lot of time together, and it really was seamless. It's like I knew her, I just know her, and she was such an incredibly nurturing friend to I'm gonna say, well, to the moment she died, but we contacted each other about 2 weeks before she, until about 2 weeks before she died, and I had to have a little surgery, and she was there every day for me during that time, during the surgery time, texting me and asking me how I was doing, and I mean, nothing, just nothing to do with her, all about me. She talked about cute Lunta, just it was just about me and how I was feeling and what to say to the doctors and ask them, and she was just my girlfriend. So we had many events over the years. We both went through very difficult times with our relationships and Sangha and friends, and we felt like we could really confide in each other completely, And she was just so big and smart, and she always kept a very kind of wide view. I'd be coming in with a little petty mind, can you believe blah blah blah? And not that she couldn't get into that, but she just held. Everybody knows Diana. I mean, her body, physically and psychologically, just walking in. If she walked in right now, well, I'm shocked, but I mean, just we have this label, Lady Diana, this, but are just her, just looking at her and how she enters and exits and speaks and sits and holds and is very powerful and very cutting. And as we know, Diana spoke from her heart, and she was ruthless at times. She would say just what she felt. One time she said to me, I said, Diana, I can't believe that. And she'd be like, Gail, this isn't a popularity contest. So, yeah, it was lots of floods of memories, quite frankly. One point, for when Sarah and David were getting married, we spent weeks and weeks looking for her dress together, for what she was going to wear. And I hired somebody to be her personal wardrobe person, and we went and we looked, Of course, and the other thing I want to say with Diana personally, for me, was that once the ball started rolling and we were, dear friends, it was almost like a boyfriend. She said she'd call, and it was like, what's she up to? It's just, I wanted to hear from her. I had such a thirst for our relationship. I really did. She was a very powerful, wonderful, warm woman. And that was beyond, it was actually bigger than Sakyam. Where that came from. So I thought that the show was said, just one thing she said was just a word, but it struck me somehow, that she had so many facets. It was like, it reminds me of like kind of a diamond, with it's the same diamond, but it just had so many different cuts to it. And here am I with my little mini cut, and everybody's got something else to say about the power in which she's given this community as a whole. And we'll live on. There's no doubt in my mind. This will live on, So I just wanted to end with one of my favorite haikus, and it reminds me of Diana, too. I'll say this once before, but 6 sparrows bathing in dirty street water. Diamonds fly in all directions. Now we have some readings. The first one is a message from Vermont Monastery to be read by Wendy Friedman. And apparently that's me. Just wanted to let everyone know this has been translated from Tibetan, so I'm going to read a bit slowly because the language is a little bit unusual in English. It is the wish to make a statement that also reflects the wishes of Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche the 12th, Karme Chöling Rinpoche, and Damchu Temple Rinpoche, Chögyam Trungpa's younger brother, that the Sangha realize they are keenly aware of Lady Diana's passing and feel it is a great loss. And of course, they regret that it's impossible for them to be present in person for the ceremony. So that this message is from the Vermont monastery in Tibet, the seat of the Trungpa Tulkus, where Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche came from and escaped from to come to the West. When 5 degenerations, a tangled mass of darkness, a power beyond our control, obstruct the radiant sunlight of the victorious one's teaching, miserable, tormented actions proliferate seamlessly. Sorrow reigns here in the minds of migrators. Now the dissolution of the thought of the Druk Sakyam Wangmo Diana Mukpo, Dakini of Trungpa Chigigatso, the singular charioteer who brought the precious teachings of the Vajrayana to Western lands into the domain of reality, is a source of extreme sadness. She was herself not merely kind in serving as the companion in the activity of the Excellent One himself. After Trungpa Rinpoche passed beyond misery, she served as the master of the teachings of Shambhala, thus with her deeds leaving her mark upon the teachings, such that she became the source of inestimable kindness, whether direct or indirect, for all of those who, depending upon her, have gathered here, because of which, from the depths of my heart, I engender a mind tormented by her blessing. And for the sake of her progressing without impediment through all the good qualities of the grounds and paths, and with palms joined at the heart to express respect by way of the 3 doors of body, speech, and mind, I offer this supplication. Victorious ones and your children who dwell in the domain of reality, I supplicate from the heart with faith in our indivisibility. Her good qualities of the grounds and paths, having gone to the very end, with 5-fold activity, the welfare of migrators be accomplished effortlessly. Offered with respect by Khenpo Tsermi, her servant in the 17th 60-year cycle of years, according to Tibet's calendar, 22nd day of the 7th month of the Little Snake year. I just wanted to share on a personal note that I had tremendous love for Lady Diana, and one of the greatest gifts I feel that she gave me personally is that sometimes close relationships aren't always easy. But when you love someone and you share love for the same people, you can find your way through difficulty with each other. And that's so worthwhile. And one of our last conversations we had in person was about how happy we were that we had found our way through some of the hard times we had with each other because of the shared love we had with people. And I just find that such a gift because if I have hard times with other people in the future, I will make that happen. So, Diana, I'm grateful. Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Sarah Mukpo to read a message from Annie Township.
Annie Chöling wrote this message for Lady Diana. She wanted to share with all of us. Lady Diana Mukpo, our beloved Chögyam Trungpa, has passed on to who knows where, and I miss her very much. Our Buddhist teachings understand that death is just the end of this lifetime, a time of transition that demonstrates the law of impermanence with its continual coming together and falling apart. Nevertheless, when someone we love makes this transition, we feel a hole in our heart. Lady Diana was the bravest person I've ever met. A true warrior, fearless and uncompromising, with a devastating ability to cut through and destroy whenever she felt that was necessary. She had definitely mastered the giant no. At the same time, she had an amazing capacity for tenderness and love. This was the side of her that I knew best. Our relationship was only occasional, and yet, whenever we talked, we touched so deeply on whatever was in her heart and mind at that time. Our conversations were vulnerable and trusting, and I feel so very fortunate to have had her trust and to have known her warmth as well as her sense of humor and her total honesty. Believe me, I will always cherish our meetings. The last time we talked, which was not so long ago, she told me that she felt ready to go. We discussed how at the time of her death, her intimate link to the Vajradhara's heart and mind was all she needed. That just to think of him was all that she needed to connect with the wide, open, spacious quality of the nature of mind. Yet if by any chance she felt any panic or distress at the end, we know who was there to remind her of her bodhisattva vow, her lonta, and her sense of humor. We know who was there to help her mix her mind with the mind of her husband Guru, Chögy to the rescue once again. Our dear Lady Diana, as you know, these days preferred to be called Diana. No big deal. Yet in my heart, she has been a most beloved lady, a beautiful lady that I so admire and respect. I feel certain that now she has returned to the unconditional ground of being. Mission accomplished. The Vajradhara of being. Kiki so to our amazing, terrifying, gentle, and completely genuine and loving Chögyam Trungpa.
We have one speaker joining us online, Dr. Antonio Wood, whom Lady Diana expressed a wish for him to offer some words at her funeral. Antonio?
We have heard about the incredible accomplishments of Lady Diana, the richness of her life, her kindness, generosity, and how she was able to be close to each individual, making them feel special and unique to her. She asked me to talk not about her life and her accomplishments, but wanted me to say a few words about her dying. I was in touch with Lady Diana over the years as friends and knew about her illness. And about 20 years ago, Lady Diana received chemotherapy for the first time. From that time on, she lived with multiple treatments for the illness and complications. such as collapsing lung, chronic pain, metastasis, difficulties breathing, etc. Throughout all those years, she maintained her connections and commitment to Sangha, family and friends, and maintained unwavering devotion to the Vidyadhara, the 16th Karmapa, and Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. But there comes a time for all of us when death ceases to be an intellectual certainty, which we all have, but it becomes an immediate reality. This time came for Lady Diana when she gave up all attempts at treatment, letting the illness progress to her inevitable death. She asked me to say a few words at her funeral. I think she wanted to share something about her experience of dying with all of us. In May of this year, we all received notice that she had decided to stop treatment. During her gradual deterioration, as the cancer advanced, she told me in July, everything seems to be as it is, nothing to do at all. But I think I'm jealous of people who die quickly. This protracted process does need a lot of letting go. She said her last attachment, the last letting go, was that of her family, children, and grandchildren. She felt touched at the time by a poem by Blake that addressed attachment. The poem is as follows: he who holds to himself a joy does the winged life destroy. He who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. She's read that poem a few times. She discovered that her fears about death were fears caused by her thoughts and imaginations of what death is, rather than death itself, an unknown. At one point, she mentioned a conversation with Trungpa Rinpoche about what she thought was a life in Tibet and her death. At the time, she said, if I have done this before, this dying, why am I afraid of it? As the illness progressed, she became progressively tired, sleeping 16 hours a day and more. Songtse Khyentse Rinpoche, who spoke with her briefly, told her that she was separating from her body. Sometimes she had in her words some sort of hallucinations, but was able to see them as such, maintaining clarity of mind. Throughout this process, she maintained a very clear mind, expressing curiosity about what it would be like to go through the bardo after her death. As she approached her death, while she would still communicate verbally or by text, which we did frequently, she began to express her experience of ordinary mind, clear, thought-free, and sharp. She approached her death with the same fearlessness, kindness, and strength of the 16-year-old girl who left her known world, some would say of British privilege, to marry a Tibetan Lama who became our guru. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Lady Diana, closest friend and chief of staff, Lisa Fiore, to read the poem Constantly Falling in Love by Chögyam Trungpa.
So, probably shouldn't say this, but especially with Carolyn here. But Lady Diana got lots of messages the last couple months of well wishes and a lot of evenings, especially a couple months ago, she would have me read them to her, and every message she got, I read to her. At some point, she said to me, "You really need elocution." It's like, you mumble, and I said, "I need your hearing." I said, you have radiation to your ear, and I need your hearing. She's like, "No, I know it's my hearing, but you're mumbling a lot. You really need to get Carolyn to give you elocution. I'm gonna make sure I tell her." So every time we would do this, and then she started to give me British instruction that she would get because she was in a lot of plays. I found out about how to read these letters. But anyway, I will try my best at this point. Constantly falling in love. You are the sun that dispels darkness. You are the moon that creates smile. You are my heart. Incredible companion. Most beautiful, dazzling light in my life. May the great eastern sun inspire you. Let us work together, and let us be together in this life and lives to come. Glory. Glory be to the Tiger Lady, the goddess of moon. I love you, Diana. Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche, August 1983. I love you, Diana.
We have a poem to Lady Diana on the occasion of receiving the Abhisheka of Vajrayogini, read by her dear friend Jane Carpenter Cole.
So I'm going to read the poem that Wendy just titled, and then I'm going to read Lady Diana's response to Rinpoche. Prior to the Abhisheka, as everyone's talked about Diana's various qualities, one being feisty, and also needing to know what was true and what isn't true. So I think she would never spiritually bypass for the sake of anyone, including her husband. So she had to know, was this right for her? And he really wanted her to do it. But she was having a dialogue with him that was pretty intense before the Abhisheka. So I'm going to read the poem that he wrote as response to that dialogue. And then I'm going to read the poem that she wrote to him. Why so? Cheerful birthday once again. You are my only eyes, heart, and life, as well as my breath. Nonetheless, we haven't been together for a while. Thinking of you is like a sudden flash of lightning and a cloudy nighttime. Remembering your smile and your face relieves my pain. Now, and in our previous lives, we have been bound together by the chain of karma. This letter was written with a combination of sadness and joy. The reason why we are together in this lifetime is only due to the Buddha Dharma and the Guru. The little I have been able to help others is because of meeting the only authentic Guru. It is by the blessings of the Guru that I am not insane. However, these days, many people are insane.
The 2 world wars and nuclear weapons and other chaotic situations have occurred. Your practicing the Dharma is not just for me, in the same way that taking a medicine is not for the doctor. It is in the order to cheer up others and to blossom your lives. The Vajrayana teachings is the highest of all. It is the greatest magic the Buddha has ever taught. Just as you need a mother to begin as an infant, Vajrayana practice is very necessary. If one realizes the importance of that, one would understand all the Vajrayana teachings. It is necessary to develop eyes in order to see the brilliance of various flowers. Then one can develop an understanding of both spiritual and temporal ways. This is not just thought up by somebody. It is 2,500 years of wisdom. I am presenting the Ganta, Dorje, Damaru as earthly gift. They are like a horse in salary. One might say, is this the one and only way? We have become civilized and no longer act as cavemen. Obviously, everyone would agree with that. The sky is blue. One might ask, aren't there other truths, other ways? There might be, but mathematics must begin with 0. One might say, I don't want to buy any else's view. In this case, one is not buying others' viewpoints, but trees have to grow from the ground. They never take root in the air upside down. But in any case, one is not buying somebody's view. The communist might say, Lenin's view is the only way. There are things with view and opinions. There are also things without view and opinion, which, as we know, is shunyata, and is free from opinion and concept. Vajrayana herself represents non-thought. There are ways to experience that free from skandhas and fixed opinions and so obtain universal freedom. It is why we have the story of the Arhats who died of the heart attacks when, for the first time, Buddha proclaimed the teachings of Shunyata. Once Nagarjuna said, I have no axioms, therefore what I present is without dichotomy. I would like to invite you into this enlightened world. Once more, I would like to express that you remain as my greatest inspiration and companion. With profound love and thanks, from your best friend, Chögyam. So she writes in Dragon Thunder, I don't know if this will speak to others as it did to me. It was one of those times that Rinpoche was talking directly to my heart and my intellect at once, and he completely disarmed me. My hesitations dissolved on the spot, and I realized that my seeming irritation was actually more a reflection of my connection to him and longing for him. So I wrote this poem in reply. Your kindness and brilliance goes beyond conceptual mind. Your generosity has transformed my life. I was lost in the clutches of confusion, searching for sanity and reference point, and along came Chöp, the first genuine person I've ever met. You demonstrated that the phenomenal world is merely a playground, be captured with kindness and skillful means. Your heart is unshakable. You have taught me to believe in myself. Your awakened mind is the source of my loyalty to you. You nurture your students with loving kindness and include them in our Mukpo family. I'm so glad I met you. Please prolong your life for the benefit of others. I love you. Your devoted wife and student, Diana.
So that's good. Please, Arnold. Lightning flashes abroad. Space spreads the voice of joy. Stands the threefold world. Here the warriors of Shambhala, the majestic victims on large thrones. Chögyam enjoys heaven and earth. The Chögyam one noble purpose peace. The trumpet of fearless death rings out. The all victorious banner flies. Temporal and spiritual glory extend. Rejoice, the great eastern sun arises. Rejoice, the great eastern sun arises. Rejoice, the great eastern sun. Keep. So, say,